Lone wolf preppers versus werewolf preppers. We're about to have that discussion next here on Prepper Nation. Welcome to Prepper Nation. I am John. Thank you very much for watching, for shooting a thumbs up or down, whatever, and hitting subscribe here on the channel. We just hit another small milestone late last night. It's truly appreciated, folks. I tell you, it's a dangerous game. They keep smacking us down to the basement. Not complaining about that, by the way, because we keep crawling back up the steps. The Beaverines will not die, son. So anyway, let's get into it this morning. Lone wolf preppers versus werewolf preppers. Part of this comes from the exclusive discussion that we had via Patreon and the Coffee Club last week. I wrote down a bunch of topics those folks want to talk about, and lone wolf prepping came up. But in the past few weeks, been several weeks back actually, I had someone reach out and ask, is it the same thing? Is lone wolf prepping the same thing as a werewolf prepper? So I said, this is a great chance to cover both of these and kind of give a broad overview of both and the pros and cons, if you will, of lone wolf prepping, which we're going to talk about first. And quickly, folks, if you are in the chat or if you're in the replay crowd, drop a comment. Let people know some of your pros and cons when it comes to lone wolf prepping, okay? So the pros for me, that yes, there are pros when it comes to lone wolf prepping. I will hear some creators say, you can't do it. You'll never make it as a lone wolf prepper. I think that you can, at least for a while. Now, eventually, you're going to have people around you. You can't survive on your own forever, okay? But you can do it a long time if it's done correctly. So, the first pro for me is it's a very low resource way of prepping. I'm constantly over here talking about prepping for a family of four, the nuclear family, if you will, because I have a family of four. And so this is the prepping that I understand, okay? And it takes up a lot of shelf space and it's kind of a pain to rotate, takes money out of the pocket every so often. Y'all know what I'm saying, especially in Joe's America. But you don't necessarily have that concern when it's just you. So, what is a lone wolf prepper? A lone wolf prepper is somebody that either has no one, they have no immediate family, they have no friends immediately where they live, or they trust no one, meaning they don't have immediate family and they don't trust their extended family. They don't really trust their neighbors on down the line. So, it's very resource low. It's easier to stockpile and stack to the rafters enough food and water for one person than it is a family of four or, eight people, whatever the case may be. So you don't need as many resources per day on average. To me, that's a huge advantage because if we see a collapse, it's a numbers game at that point. As soon as you dive in on what you have, the clock starts ticking and eventually you run out. Okay. Quick decisions and movement, which I've mentioned before. So in a group setting, let's say you've got you've got a group of eight. Now this can be a family of four and a couple of couples that they know or something, or maybe a couple and a couple of other kids. Let's say you have eight people and decisions need to be made. So in that type of setting, probably what you're going to see is you're going to see a committee or people voting or people discussing what the next move should be. Do we bug out? Let's take a vote, this sort of thing. Let's go around the room, son, and talk about it. That sort of deal. And then if you're bugging out, you're going to move slower. once you get to, once you head off to go wherever you're going, the movement is going to be much slower. So with a lone wolf, there's no debate. You decide what you're going to do and then you go and do it. So it's a much faster way to accomplish things. Now in a group setting, and I've said this as well, if you have that warlord, if you have that one person that you're lined under, the shot call or whatever you want to call them, and you trust that individual, it allows you to make decisions just as quickly because that person decides and they're going to tell you how it is, and then you move forward. Finally, noise and blend. I know that sounds strange, but a group of 8 moving through the woods is undoubtedly going to make more noise than one person moving through the woods, especially if they're familiar with being out in the woods and things. Okay. And blend, meaning if there's a threat or a perceived threat nearby, you hear something off in the distance, it's harder to hide 8 people and the supplies of 8 people than it is a single person. So I think there is an advantage in that as well. I mean, it's not talked about that often, but you're carrying less and you can duck out of sight, out of mind a lot faster. Now, there are plenty of cons as well when it comes to being a lone wolf prepper. Number 1, and I think this is the biggest, you have to sleep. You cannot go 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 days without sleep. At some point, you have to close your eyes and you have to get some downtime, okay? And as a lone wolf prepper, especially if you're outside of your home environment, that's dangerous, okay? Because you don't know what's coming upon you. Now, there are ways to go about it. You can set up, trip lines, meaning, fish wire and beer cans, something crude with rocks in there. There are things that you can set up. But if people know how to track and people are very good in the woods, they may be able to get around that stuff and you're sound asleep when they come up on you. So that's a huge disadvantage. The second huge disadvantage is any significant medical emergency or situation that pops up could completely take you out of the game, so to speak. This can be something as simple as a toothache that will not go away. And for whatever reason, folks, if y'all have ever had a toothache like this, to the point where you cannot concentrate on anything else, right? That thing has got to come out somehow. That's a huge disadvantage. This could be you roll your ankle, or you twist your knee the wrong way. There are a lot of different things that can go wrong. Again, especially if you're outside of your home environment. I keep saying that for a reason. And finally, I believe there's strength in numbers. Although you have to have more food and water, and you have to, you're going to make more noise, you're going to move slower. There is also strength in numbers, meaning if you have a lone wolf and this person has military training and they're well armed, okay, you've got good gear. That's great. But if you roll up on a group of 8 and they all have military training and good gear, the lone wolf is probably going to lose in that situation. I mean, it could play out however, right? But it's not a situation you want to be in all alone when it's 8-1, that sort of thing. So, just some stuff to consider. All right, before we move forward here, bunker in first, always. This should be every single prepper's mentality out there. Even if you're not a lone wolf prepper, all of your stuff is at home. You can only carry so much. You can only hide so much in caches in the ground, things like this. You can only carry what you can carry, and that's it. You're gonna have to leave a lot of stuff back at home. So home base should always be the first plan, but especially if you are considering or if you have no choice, maybe it's not a consideration. Son, maybe you just have nobody else and you're a lone wolf prepper by default. Okay. You should focus on bunkering in first, primarily because you're going to be able to sleep at night. It's much easier to secure the windows. It's much easier to secure the doors. I will link Nightlock and On Guard down below. Normally, I don't link gear down below, but this is stuff that I actually use. I know it works. I'll drop them right down below the video. There's a demonstration video on one. I think it's the On Guard system. It buys you a lot of time. If people are trying to kick in a door, all right, even a group trying to kick in your front door, it's going to wake you up and it's going to allow you enough time to get set up and get ready to go, so to speak. Um, and again, the other thing is you're not going to have to leave anything behind. So if a medical situation comes up, you've probably got a lot more medical gear in your home than you do in a rucksack. You know, even if you have a great medical kit, stuff's only going to last for so long. Number two, if you're a lone wolf prepper, you have got to focus on skills and bushcrafting. All right. Seriously, you know, it's about stacking stuff, sure, and it's about growing food. Where you at, Militant? If you're in the chat, he's always saying grow food, which is an excellent comment. But you really need to be focused, especially on bushcrafting because and home defense, but bushcrafting because if you have to leave your home, if someone knows how to bushcraft, they can make it out there a really, really long time. Whereas the average prepper, not so much, okay? Or if the average prepper can, it's going to be a miserable experience compared to, you know, bushcrafting. And focusing on skills just means, again, if you have a group setting and there are 8 people, there's a high likelihood, or at least there should be, that each one of those adults is bringing something to the table. Maybe one of them has nursing experience. Maybe one of them knows how to work on vehicles. One or two of them know how to work with firearms and things. And so if you're by yourself, you're going to have different skill sets. You're going to have to make up for that shortfall because you don't have people around you with that skill set, right? You're going to have to learn these things on your own and, you know, focus on those. And finally, before we move on, if you are a lone wolf prepper, you cannot afford to have cheap gear. Normally, I'm like, you know what, son? Cheap gear works just fine. You know, you can get a large coffee can, you can put the basics in there, and you can go bushcraft for a weekend or something. But if your plan is to be a lone wolf, and there's a likelihood that you're going to be out there at some point in the woods, you cannot afford to have a $40 tent from Walmart. They're gonna fail on you at some point. They're gonna rip, they're gonna leak. You know what I mean? You can't afford it. You're gonna have to spend the money that it takes to get something like a Scorpion Snug Pack. You know, they're $300+ for a single person tent, but they're well worth it if you can afford it. You're gonna need a good rucksack. Normally, I'm on here saying, look, man, if you got a Ghostbusters book bag, that'll work, and it will for a little while. But if you're a lone wolf, go ahead and spend the extra money to get a really good rucksack, a really good tent, really good boots, a really good knife, and a really good firearm that you are familiar with. Okay. At least one, if not multiple. I would go with the scoped rifle and a sidearm if it were me. Now, moving on to werewolf preppers. So, to the individual that asked the question, and I answered it a few weeks ago, but I'm going to cover it here now. They could be the same, but they're typically not the same. We're going to go over what a werewolf prepper is, okay? A werewolf prepper is a person or maybe even a group of people, maybe even a small mag or something, and their sole strategy during a collapse situation, during something like Hurricane Katrina or an economic collapse or boots on the ground, is to prey on you. That's their prepping strategy. These are not people that stack things to the rafters. They don't go through the motion of growing things. They may have skill sets and they probably do have some sort of training, but they intend to use that training against you. They see preppers, the average prepper, as low hanging fruit. And you'll see these comments from time to time Preppers are just grocery stores for me. That sort of a comment. Those are werewolf preppers, and trust me, they are out there. Believe it. People, I don't know where the term werewolf prepper came from, but people that are preying on other preppers, it's been a thing for a while. Um, they are more dangerous than zombies. I mean, let's face it, zombies are desperate, but a lot of times they have had minimal training at best. They're not gonna have any kind of gear. They probably don't have a firearm. Again, they're just desperate and they want what you have. All right. They may show up at your door in great numbers in mass, but they're zombies by and large. Werewolf preppers, on the other hand, are very strategic. They are thinkers. Again, they are sitting there wherever they are right now, thinking about the preppers in their area, scouting preppers in their area that may have slipped up and said something online, and they are likely armed. And again, many of them have some sort of formal training. I'll give you an example. This has been a year plus ago. Okay. Had a police officer, law enforcement officer, reach out to me and said, and this is not verbatim. I'm trying to remember. It's not word for word, but they basically said, "Hey, I'm an LEO." And I heard two LEOs that I work with talking about if there's a collapse situation, they're going to rob citizens. And now I know to watch out for these two because I can't trust them. So that's the dynamic. Okay, not every law enforcement officer is this way. I'm just saying, good cop, bad cop, right? One is a legitimate prepper. The one that reached out to me has the formal training, knows what they're doing, but they also had people that they worked with every day who approach it totally different. They are going to be werewolf preppers. And people out there have military training, maybe. Same thing, okay? Um, and again, they scour the prepping community. So, okay, so keep your cards close to your vest. What do I mean by this? Don't throw everything that you have down into a prepping chat. Okay, please. I'm not ever going to ask y'all to throw down what you have into the live streams or anything like that. Please don't do it. And if you're in a situation, I'm not ever going to tell y'all not to watch any creator. I don't care who y'all are adults here, but I'm saying if you are in a creator's live stream or their chat or whatever, and they're asking specific questions about what you have, it's time to ghost that channel and find something else because nobody should be asking questions like that. But I've seen it. Werewolf preppers do scour. I've seen people ask questions here, leave it in the comment section and things. Where are you located exactly in Michigan? What's your prepping setup look like? Don't ever offer that, folks. It's okay to be nice, but you don't want to offer up what you have. Um, and also worth mentioning, these werewolf preppers may and probably will try to infiltrate MAGs, mutual assistance groups. So if you're in one, be very wary of people that have just shown up prior to a collapse or just after a collapse. Okay. Not saying that person is a werewolf prepper, but don't let your guard down. All right. Um, these people are prepping, but they're doing it totally different. Whereas we're prepping and we're prepping so we can kind of, or at least me, bunker in, stay in tune with the news, try and figure out where the threats are going to be coming from, if at all. Um, those folks, the werewolf preppers, they are scheming and they're strategizing on how they can steal from people like us, no matter what. And think about this, all right? Your own government, whatever country you're in, but I'm in the United States, your own government is a werewolf prepper when you get right down to it. Because think about it. They're preparing, they've had, they've got the training, but they also have paperwork and documents in place, folks, that gives them the legal authority. I disagree with that, by the way, but gives them the legal authority to steal from people during the worst of times. Again, Hurricane Katrina, research it. Go watch some videos on it. Watch what the local law enforcement and even the National Guard was responsible for against citizens during that time. Oftentimes, when there's a crisis, your rights get suspended by the people that design this paperwork, and then they can take whatever they want to, or at least they think they can. Just show up and take it. Trust only your inner circle. That's how you avoid werewolf preppers. All right. If people are asking questions at work, give them the minimal amount of information. Don't pull the cards from the vest, so to speak. If you're in a prepping chat, that's awesome. Maybe ask questions that are related to prepping. But again, don't drop your preps down there. And on this channel, if you followed it for years now, here and there, you will see a firearm that I have, whether it's a shotty, whether it's a pistol or something like that. I'm not offering everything up. You will see some of the preps from time to time, but I'm not one of these creators because it's stupid. I'm not one of these creators that turns the phone on and walks through and inventories, this is the cabinets that we have. This is the prepping stash that we have. It's just dumb because there's so many people out there that are going to try and take advantage of those individuals. Don't volunteer information is what I'm trying to say, because that's the biggest advantage that werewolf preppers have. If you've done things right, you're able to secure your home, you have firearms, you have means to protect yourself, and you don't offer much information, you really don't have to worry about werewolf preppers. Think about this, and shout out to Kelly and Rambo who mentioned this during the Patreon Coffee Club live stream. They're entering the point now where they're going to start setting up kill boxes in the home. And this is a great thing. Believe it or not, it sounds nasty, but it's a great thing as a prepper to keep yourself safe, because if a werewolf prepper comes to your home, or even a small group of werewolves, they show up at the house, all right, they should be flying blind. Meaning, if they're able to breach your home and get into the front door, they know absolutely nothing about the surroundings. They don't have a layout of your home. They don't know what kind of weapons that you have, like the extensive amount of weapons that you have. They don't know. They're walking into a pitch black living room. They have no idea how many people are at home. These people thrive on information. Don't give them any, in other words. 3 or 4 people that are heavily armed. They've got AR. Let's say they've got scoped ARs, and all you have is a couple of 12 gauges. Okay. If you set up a kill box and you've positioned things in the right way, as Rob at Warlord TV says, well, son, that's just a 4-man loot drop, because you're going to be able to handle your business and they're not even going to realize what's going on. And they just brought you a lot of nice gifts. You know what I mean? It's like they're paying tribute to you at that point. Just because these people consider themselves werewolves does not mean that we are sheeps. All right. There are a lot of people watching this right now that have military training, have done it the right way, have decent firearms, and you're not sheep, you're sheep dogs. And werewolves are scared. They're terrified of sheepdogs. I'm just saying. Go Beaverines. Y'all, let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe shoot a thumbs up on your way out the door. Take care. God bless.